So, this has been kind of a challenging Sunday for which to think about a talk. We've got the election, we've got the run for peace, we got Thanksgiving. Tiny little topics, you know, no importance. So, in fact, I've been thinking, okay, so how do these things all come together? And they do, on a spiritual level. So that's what I'm going to try to do. It's really the whole story, the whole kit and caboodle of this is about oneness and peace, about recognizing one source, as well as global oneness, and about running. So, let's consider, first of all, the Thanksgiving story as it really happened is a wonderful example for us in all of these contexts. There was a version of this story that was propagated during the 19th century with the intention of helping the melting pot. So we'd have some national myths and legends that we could identify with. And so, of course, the story is told from the standpoint of the English-speaking settlers, who arguably very few of us could trace our ancestry back to. But they became kind of the meme for European Americans. And they had a hard time. You know, the story is actually pretty true about, this little group. I don't know how many they were. They came over in one creaky little sailing ship and arrived in the middle, glorious summer of 1620. Little did they know, they were in New England, which any of you who have lived there know can get pretty harsh in the winter. They'd brought seeds to plant. They brought wheat and British, UK kinds of veggies, and they planted, but of course they planted too late, and that stuff doesn't grow there. So they had a very, very slender harvest. And as the weather got colder, they realized, oh, we don't have adequate shelter. We're cold. And they didn't know how to add to the clothing they'd brought. They hadn't expected that they were going to a place that was much harsher than their natural climate. You know, these people set out in a huge amount of trust. They had no idea where they were going to end up or what it was going to be like. But they knew that they couldn't, in conscience, stay where they were. And they felt guided to go to this new world they'd heard of, this wonderful new world. And they did. They acted. They trusted. They arrived. And half of them died within a year. Where they landed, now this is really kind of spooky, had been, talk about what I'm seeing in here, what I'm asking you to see, because I'm going to ask you to see it in a little bit, is divine order. The place they landed, the place they chose, had been the village of a family of Native Americans called the Patuxets. And the Patuxets had been wiped out by smallpox several years earlier. That site that the English-speaking settlers arrived at and chose had been Patuxet village. There were only 2 Patuxets left who had escaped the smallpox because They had been befriended by two different English explorers a decade earlier, and they had gone to England and weren't around when the smallpox hit. So when they came back home, nobody was left. But in the process of being in England, they learned how to speak English. I mean, if you think about the world in 1620 and what was known about North America and Europe by each other, this is unbelievable. Disney couldn't have done it any better. So these two Patuxets joined a neighboring tribe, the Wampanoags, who were also Algonquians. They basically shared a similar language, similar culture. They were kind of like cousins. And they moved inland somewhat. This story really sings to me because I grew up 20 feet away from one of the Wampanoag council houses and played there as a little kid. So this story and these characters are people that, wow, you know. So when I I did some research and read about, you know, what was the really accurate story. I was like, wow, I didn't know. Anyway, these two Patuxet dudes were out hunting one day in the spring of 1621 and thought they'd visit the old village, which was now their burial ground, and they found there pitiable remnants of the ones who had survived the winter. They were sick, they were starving, they were in bad shape. And they observed them for a while and realized, ooh, these guys, they're not going to make it. And one day they came out of the woods and they said, hello, in English. I kid you not. But you know, it was a real value to the Algonquian people that we are all one. We're one with the earth. We're one with all creatures. We're one with all beings. And as one, it is our joy and our duty to share whatever we have with anyone else in distress. And apparently, those two Patuxet dudes moved in with the English-speaking settlers and coached them all summer and taught them, gave them seeds, taught them what to plant that would grow, taught them how to cultivate it so it would thrive, taught them how to build native wigwams so that they had warm shelter for the next winter, taught them how to make clothing that would protect them. And in the fall, the Algonquians traditionally had a green corn ceremony to thank the universe for all the blessings that they had in their lives. And their guests that year were the English-speaking settlers, who were so grateful to these foreign, strange-looking, strange behavior, unchristian, heathen, other humans who had literally given themselves and what they knew to help them thrive for the next winter. This was a moment of incredible peace. Right there. What is peace? Peace is oneness. And there were all kinds of differences between the native settlers who were fundamentalist Christians and the Native Americans, the English-speaking settlers, and the Native Americans. All kinds of differences, all kinds of reasons for which they could have hated each other. And they did. unfortunately, come to do that. But that year, as a result of giving in oneness, they experienced peace along with gratitude. They knew their oneness. They knew that Source provides everything. They acknowledged that. They took time together to express their gratitude. And it's worth remembering. It's a very inspiring story. And it's a wonderful example of how we can regroup and move forward after the disarray of the recent election. Now, I know that not everybody felt as I did on election night. I was very distressed. I was very distressed. I couldn't sleep. I was up all night. I was crying. I felt sick to my stomach. And at about 3 a.m. I thought, okay, what's going on here? Why am I suffering so much? This was an orderly process. It went according to the way elections have gone forever. Yeah, I've been really unhappy with the outcomes of a bunch of elections across my life. I even once actually obtained a visa to emigrate to Canada after Bush was elected. I didn't do it because I was an expat once, and I chose to come back. And so I thought, okay, if I expatriate myself once again, am I going to be happy there? Probably not. I'm going to want to come back, so why go? Just stay, be with it, you know. It works. It's my country. And so I realized that my attachment to the ideals of what I thought were the ideals of my country was part of my attachment, was part of my suffering. Attachment is always at the basis of suffering. And the other part of my suffering was judgment. I had been judging people on both sides of the election, but on one side more than others, more than the other. And so why did I feel like the world was coming to an end, basically? Because of my judgments. You know, I don't believe that there is such a thing as evil. In unity, we say, and usually believe, there is only one presence and one power. We all said it this morning. Active in my life, and that's God. There's no room for evil. All there is God. So, had I been believing that everybody in that election process was actually expressing God? And if I didn't believe that, you know what I was believing. I was attributing evil to certain people. And so it felt initially like the victory of evil. But wait a minute. There's no such thing. So I had this fairy tale made up about my country. It was a Disney tale. And I was very attached to it. And people who differ from any of us across any of the humanly determined lines, across race, across religion, across language, across origins, across party, across education, All that stuff is made up. It doesn't exist in truth. It is irrelevant to us as one unified expression of spirit. Totally irrelevant. I was suffering for nothing. Okay, so it took me a couple of weeks to finally, be able to be in alignment with that understanding. But that night, that's what I was working on was, okay, what's the problem? The problem was I was believing human minds, human divisions, which have no reality in truth. I was not being in truth. I was being in my own little anxious head. That didn't have any point. Why should I do that to myself? So, thinking back, as I have thought back over the same period, to the English-speaking settlers and the Wampanoags during 1621, they set us a different example in that moment, a beautiful example, an example of knowing and trusting that in spirit we are all one. And an example of understanding that no matter what things seem like, the universe provides. There is a divine order. And in divine order, there was an open position for leadership of this particular human manifestation. And somebody stood up and said, yeah, I'll take it. And people believed him. Human expressions of spirit believed him. And he's our new president. And we will have many opportunities. We already have many opportunities since that election to keep saying to ourselves, this is all spirit expressing. We have no way of knowing the whole story. We don't know what these people, or what we, for that matter, really, agreed to do in the context of the divine plan before we were born, or what our actions in this moment are opening going forward in the divine plan. What is steady is divine order. The universe in order, expressing through all of us. So as I thought about it more, I thought, okay, so it doesn't matter about Democrats or Republicans, and I have to tell you I come from a very Republican family. Phone conversations have been very interesting. That doesn't matter. And we know that as family members. We still love each other. Even though we disagree heartily about politics, we're still sisters and brothers. And we appreciate knowing each other. And we love each other as part of one family, which is a microcosm of the whole divine plan. That doesn't matter. You know, it's a different perspective. And in the world, your perspective and my perspective and our perspective and his perspective and her perspective, guess what? There's only one perspective in truth. There is spirit. We're all part of it. We're all expressions of it. And somehow, way beyond my ability to figure out, that plan of love and oneness is on its way to manifesting through each and every one of us. And so instead of agonizing over, 4 years of this, or thinking of each other as enemies, we really have no enemies in spirit. They're all imaginary. We go to war over fairy tales. We are in, I don't know how many wars right now, over fairy tales. War is not truth. War is based on human imagining. So my conclusion for myself, I offer it to you, you can do with it what you want, is, okay, it's time to remember that I am a global citizen, that I am a citizen of the cosmos, that I am a worker in the party for universal peace. And it's time for me to really be there and to become aware, as I asked you to become aware in that redacted story of the Pilgrims and the Indians, to become aware of how our habitual story of what's going on in our lives is a fairy tale. To become aware of who we are as human beings, all one. And to put our feet, to actually go and live in awareness, as those Patuxet natives did, of, okay, love is mine to do. I can't delegate love to a government. I can't delegate love to a party. I can't delegate love to social workers or government agencies. We cannot delegate love. That is our personal responsibility. Each and every one of us on site, with our feet and our hands and our hearts. Unity Center of Peace, as your spiritual community, is taking a first step in that direction, starting next Sunday, as we begin to study and join with the Dalai Lama's Force for Universal Peace, called A Force for Good. The book is available. I suggest you get it. We're going to be working through those principles and deciding how we are going to be there acting as global citizens for world peace. If you look at humanity across all artificial divisions, we're not only the majority, we're the whole. It's up to us to act as the one and to not allow petty divisions to dominate us. We're just not being there when we do that. So I invite you, going forward, to be willing to be part of the change in awareness as we move to global awareness, global citizenship, and local action, which those of you on the Outreach Committee know was the original title of that committee. So, a couple of things. On Thanksgiving, Unity Center of Peace has a custom of sharing blessings with everybody who comes to the service. You are all winners. Some of you may have noticed that big bowl of beads in the kitchen. All those little bitty beads, they got added since last Thanksgiving by people coming in and habitually putting a few beads into the big bowl and saying, "Thank you, God." and remembering and celebrating everything that we are all grateful for. All those beads in that big bowl have been blessed with someone's thanks. And on the Sunday before Thanksgiving, we have given them out to everybody who's here and asked you to take them home and double bless those beads and share them with your families and friends in a Thanksgiving celebration. Now, I've tried this with my family. They've now become used to it. At first, you ask people standing around in a circle to say, okay, please take a few beads and put them wherever you decided to put them, and let us know, share with us, what are the things you're grateful for this Thanksgiving? If you haven't tried it, the answer is total silence, which is very interesting, thinking about what Thanksgiving is supposed to be about. So the first thing to do is warn your family and friends. This is coming up. They're going to be on stage. They need to have a gratitude list. So they're ready to share it on Thanksgiving. In your handout, in your program, there's a handout that gives you a couple of suggestions about how you can do this, have fun, make it work. So when the collection comes up in a couple of minutes, assuming that the universe has done its magic and the beads have arrived, they will be in the bowls. And as the bowls go around, we ask you to both take and give. Take some beads. They're in baggies. And give your gift. Emily, did the beads arrive? All right. Okay. Yes, there is. But I'm just saying. So, now that you know what to expect, to end, let's just come back to thinking about the election, Thanksgiving, and the race. For a minute. It's all one, right. And you know what? Contrast energizes change.
Yes, it does.
Boy, have we had a huge gift of contrast in the past couple of weeks. Contrast to what our spiritual vision and our spiritual awareness is. Similar to the contrast that those English-speaking settlers were dealing with. Hopefully a contrast that's powerful enough to energize us into taking action and changing our awareness and becoming much more aligned with universal oneness. I envision us as a spiritual family stepping up to help co-create the world that we envision, that world that Spirit envisions, aligning ourselves with Spirit. And I'm suggesting that we be grateful together for the example on both sides of that aisle, both the natives and the English speakers. They were both wonderful role models. No division there. They were both aligned with Spirit. So to look at that as an example of where we need to go today in our lives. And at Thanksgiving, I'm expressing my gratitude. I think all of our gratitude for every one of you, our spiritual family and friends. May you and your personal family and friends enjoy a beautiful, peaceful, loving holiday as you embrace awareness of your global citizenship. And so it is.